more than 180 House Democrats just voted to help Republicans pass a $738 billion spending bill. So now this is called the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. It's the NDAA. And what it does is it increases the Pentagon budget by about $22 billion, gives Donald Trump the Space Force, and allows Trump to continue selling weapons to Saudi Arabia to be able to use in the war in Yemen. So now, despite that, you have 188 House Democrats that voted to give Trump all of these things that he wanted. Just 48 House Democrats, 48 House members, 41 Democrats voted against this bill. The final vote was 377 to 48. Really? Now, again, we've got over 200 Democrats in the House. And yet, here is a mostly Republican bill that allows for endless war, and the Democrats pass it along very, very easily. This gives the president carte blanche to keep launching conflicts in the Middle East and to keep those conflicts ongoing. This is the same House of Representatives, I want to point out, that says Donald Trump is so incredibly dangerous that he needs to be impeached and removed from office. Well, either Donald Trump is dangerous and needs to be impeached and removed, or impeachment is nothing more than a political move, and that we can continue to give Trump more and more power and more money in order to wage war. What is it? You can't do both at the same freaking time. Which leads me, of course, back to the point that I've been making all week. Democrats suck at politics, and they suck at policy, and they continue to bow down to Republican framing. And again, this goes back to the Republican framing of, well, I mean, Democrats, you can't just, you're disrupting Congress by doing impeachment of the president. And Democrats say, oh, yeah? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to impeach the president, and we're going to try to push policy. Again, bowing to the Republican narrative, right? No, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Hold my beer. We're just going to give you everything that you want and be incredibly bipartisan while we're also trying to impeach the president. That's ridiculous. What are you doing? Now, there are a few Democrats that stood very, very strong. That's 41 Democrats. And one of them was Ro Khanna. So he voted against the bill. And before passage, he went to the floor and he said this.
In strong opposition to this defense authorization. There are many things that you can call the bill, but it's Orwellian to call it progressive. Let's speak in facts. When President Obama left, the defense budget was $618 billion. This defense budget is $120 billion more than what President Obama left us with. That could fund free public college for every American. It could fund access to high-speed, affordable internet for every American. But it's worse. The bipartisan provision to stop the war in Yemen, stripped by the White House. The bipartisan amendment to stop the war in Iran, stripped by the White House. The bipartisan provision to repeal the 2002, the George W. Bush authorization for the war in Iraq, which is sending our troops overseas, stripped by the White House. At some time, we can't just rhetorically give standing ovations when the president says we're going to end endless wars and continue to vote to fund them. It wasn't just President George W. Bush who committed the biggest blunder of foreign policy in the 21st century by sending us to Iraq. It was the abdication of this body, with many members of Congress who voted right with him. My question is, when are we going to listen to the American people? When are we going to do our Article I duty and stop funding these endless wars and start funding our domestic priorities?
That's actually what a progressive is supposed to sound like, being against endless war. And what happened to the rest of the Democrats, the 188 cowards who voted to give Trump basically everything they wanted? It's so incredibly frustrating. So now, again, Republicans, as you heard Ro Khanna explain, they got basically everything that they wanted. and everything that progressives put in there essentially got stripped out. So, but Republicans get the Space Force, more defense spending, the elimination of the bipartisan effort to stop our involvement in the wars, all these different wars. And what did the Democrats get in return? Well, I mean, look, here's the thing, and this is going to frustrate you. It infuriated me when I read this quote. Representative Adam Smith, who is a Democrat from Washington, voted enthusiastically to pass this bill, called it the, quote, most progressive defense bill we have passed in decades. Progressive defense bill. You've got to be kidding. So what did the Democrats get that they can make this giant boast? They got just 12 weeks of paid family leave for federal workers only. Federal workers. And by the way, that's just in the House bill. That is not in the Senate bill. So there's no guarantee that provision will even make it to the final legislation. Mitch McConnell could easily just go, hey, you know what? I don't actually like that. So let's take that out, and we'll just pass this one. And then we'll get the Democrats in the House to cower down again and vote without that provision so that we get 100% of what we want. I mean, that's it. That's it. This is an utter and complete capitulation. I mean, again, the House also excluded a mandate that the EPA regulate PFAS on military bases as a hazardous substance. So, Democrat 101. Give Republicans everything they want, even when they're a minority in the House. Insane. They're so goddamn weak. Except for people like, again, Ro Khanna and AOC and Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee voted against this as well. And 45 other Democrats. I'm sorry. The other Democrats have voted against this. The rest are cowards. The rest are absolute cowards. And so they gave Trump and the Republicans everything they want. And here's what Mitch McConnell says about that, by the way. Mitch McConnell on Monday said the final NDAA is, quote, not either side's ideal bill. Well, I find that laughable. But he said that House Democrats' partisan demands were now gone. Sanity and progress has begun to prevail on the NDAA and other issues. Are you serious? Sanity and progress. He means even if you give us everything we want, we're still going to guard your priorities insane and you unreasonable. That's the Republican Party. Jesus, man. That's why you don't give an inch to the Republicans. Now, you also had Representative Rob Whitman, a senior House Armed Services member who's a Republican, saying this, quote, a bill that started with unreasonable partisan riders is now a piece of legislation that I believe does right by our men and women in uniform and provides sound, strong defense policy for the next year. Explain to me how adding a separate space force, which we're not supposed to weaponize space, by the way, there are international treaties say that we can't do that. How is that more reasonable? Donald Trump wasn't even serious about Space Force. This came from the insane ramblings of the idiot in chief, the dotard or dotard in chief. And he's like, oh, you know what? Space Force, I actually kind of like that. So, yeah, let's do a Space Force. Oh, my God. What are you doing? And look, more importantly, how is allowing the continuation of a genocide in Yemen, which we are funding, by the way, and we are arming Saudi Arabia, a country who, yes, attacked us on 9/11, right? Or 15 out of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia, who has a fundamentalist Wahhabist Islamic government in charge right now that, again, fosters extreme versions of and forms of Islam, fundamentalists. And not only that, but the government had killed a U.S.-based journalist, dismembered them. And yet, President Trump, despite bipartisan efforts to stop arming that country, says, no, we're going to keep arming that country. And Democrats said, yes, let's keep arming that country. That's insane. Absolutely insane. And you know why? Trump has got, why he likes Saudi Arabia? Trump's got business ties. Of course he does. Jared Kushner also, in the discussions for NDAA, told Democrats to strip out those provisions against the war in Yemen. And they said, yes, sir, let's do it. All to get what? 12 weeks? 12 weeks of paid leave for federal workers. My God, man. I am so tired of weak, pathetic Democrats who never fight. I thought they were supposed to be the resistance. Instead, as usual, they're the assistants. Assisting Donald Trump, assisting Mitch McConnell, assisting the military-industrial complex. There's also, by the way, we still can, apparently they keep telling us we can't afford Medicare for all. And yet we give more and more money to the military and create Donald Trump's ridiculous space farce. I mean, stupid. Absolutely stupid. Warren Gunnels, by the way, and I want to leave you here with a quote from him as Bernie Sanders' senior advisor. He tweeted this on Wednesday night, quote, "New rule. Every member of Congress who voted to give the most corrupt, unhinged, and unstable president in history $738 billion to fight endless wars, fund a bogus space force, and put our troops at risk must never tell us that we cannot afford Medicare for all or a Green New Deal ever." Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.